more tomfoolery. They're destroying emails from the fourth assessment report. Next slide. Remember the fun we had last year over 1995 global temperatures with early release information, inventing the December monthly values, letters to nature, etc., etc.? I think we should have a cunning plan about what to do this year, simply to avoid a lot of wasted time. I've been discussing with David P. and suggest the following. Number 1, by December 20th, we'll have land and sea data up to November. Number 2, David computes the December land anomaly based on 5 heights up to 20 December. We assume that December as a sea anomaly is the same as November. Assume so, rather than just wait for December to come and plug in the scientific values for that, they're just going to use the same month for November as December and assume that their values are the same. I'll get into that in a bit. We can therefore give a good estimate of 1996 global temperatures by December 20th. We feed this selectively to Nick Natal, who's had this in the past and seems now to expect special treatment, so that he can write an article for the silly season. We also give this to Novell Nicholas. We explain the data is provisional and how the data has been created early, i.e. estimates for December. And also, we explain why the globe is 0.23 K, or whatever the final figure is, colder than 95. Also that the global annual average is only accurate to a few hundredths of a degree. We said this last year, can we be more exact? From now on, we will answer no more inquiries about 1996 global temperatures, but explain that it will be released in January. We released the final estimates on January 20th with a joint UEA and Metro press release. It may not evoke any interest by then. For answering questions released to Nick Natal, late January or December, we give the same answers we gave him. Are you happy with this, or can you suggest something better, i.e. simpler? I know this sounds a bit cloak and dagger, but it's just meant to save time in the long run. Jeff. Oh, who's Jeff? Who's this Jeff character? Well, Jeff is Jeff Jenkins, the self-described frontman explaining climate change. The Guardian, from the United Kingdom, in 2004 called him the man Tony Blair goes to for climate change advice. And here he is talking about making up data. The cunning plan here involves inventing temperatures of readings and releasing fake estimates of temperature data for the year before the year is even over. According to Jenkins, the fake temperature information will be fed selectively to Nick. And Nick Natal is the spokesperson for head of the media for the United Nations Environment Program. Global warming is not Nick Natal's only media manipulation enterprise. In October of 2008, his claims that Somalia had been used as a dumping ground for European toxic waste were immediately picked up by Islamists to justify Somali pirate attacks. And why would Jenkins want to cover up the real data? Well, even with the fake data, he didn't look forward to having to explain that 1996 was in fact colder than 1995, which kind of flew in the face of Earth always getting hotter all the time, always, always, always theory. In spite of this, their scam was noticed, this time not only by the media outlets. Mike Fomento of the Washington Times wrote in early January, the climate research, what's my phone doing here? The climate research unit at England's University of East Anglia made headlines, including New York Times, when a preliminary report saying that 1995 was the hottest year on record, but their data were only for 11 months, rather than risk December's temperatures boiling everything. They jumped the gun and set their press releases out early. Their fears were fulfilled when December's average temperature came in at the lowest in 17 years. It was a pretty ordinary year, said NASA scientist John Christie, who has been analyzing satellite data on the temperature since 1979, and James Hansen of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, who pretty much started the whole global warming scare, admits his study of land areas where the effect of global warming would be most severe revealed that 1995 was about 0.02 degrees Celsius colder than 1990. And I'd like to take time to point out that I got a lot of this info from docstalk.blogspot.com. Yes, I'm referencing a blog. Deal with it. It's a very informative and useful blog. You should go to DocsTalk and read it. There's a very interesting article about ClimateGate written by Andrew Walden there. You should check it out. I'm ashamed that I'm referencing a blog. I'm aware. Let's move on. Crikey. Here's from Michael E. Mann, the guy that made that wonderful graph that you couldn't trust earlier. This was the danger of always criticizing the skeptics for not publishing in the peer-reviewed literature. Obviously, they found a solution to that. Take over a journal. So what do we do about this? I think we have to stop considering climate research a legitimate peer-reviewed journal. Perhaps we should encourage our colleagues in the climate research community to no longer submit to or cite papers in this journal. We would also need to consider what we need to tell or request of our more reasonable colleagues who currently sit on the editorial board. What do you think? I think the skeptics will use this paper to their own ends, and it will set paleo back a number of years if this goes unchallenged. I will be emailing the journal to tell them I'm having nothing more to do with it until they rid themselves of this troublesome editor. So, what's going on here with Phil Jones and Mike Mann? Well, Phil Jones and Mike Mann are raging mad because a paper highly critical of their work involving proxy studies has achieved peer-reviewed status and been published in the Climate Research Journal. The paper in question is Lessons and Limits of Climate History by Willie Soon and Sally Ballenius, and they're astrophysicists at the Solar and Stellar Astrophysics Division of Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. And one of the biggest arguments you'll hear from people in the climate change community is that, well, there are lots of skeptics, sure, but none of them have ever published anything that's been peer-reviewed. Our work is all peer-reviewed and therefore more trustworthy. So as soon as one of the skeptics' papers gets peer-reviewed and published in a noteworthy journal, their response is not, maybe we should re-examine our science. Their response is, we should boycott this paper. So, no. So I'm going to wrap the section with leaked emails by going into Harry Read Me. This is a great file. I'm done dealing with that phone. I'm going to look at the paper now. Okay. That. Don't need that. That. There. Ah, here we go. So here's some bits of an article written by Lori Goldstein from the Chicago Sun. And she writes, in the file, harryreadme.txt, it's 274 pages long, by the way. This describes the efforts of a climatologist/programmer at the Climate Research Unit of the East Anglia University to update the huge statistical database, which is over 11,000 files large, of important climate data between 2006 and 2009. The computer coding, along with the programmer's apparently unsuccessful efforts to complete the project, involve data which are the foundation of the study of climate change. Recordings from hundreds of weather stations around the world of temperatures and precipitation measurements from 1901 to 2006. Sun and cloud computer simulations and the like. Presumably precise. These presumably precise data are the backbone of climate science. Reading harryreadme.txt, it's clear that the CRU files were a mess. The programmer laments huge gaps in data, bug-filled programs, and worries about all the guesswork he's doing. His comments suggest the problems go back years. The Climate Research Unit at East Anglia University is considered by many as the world's leading climate research agency. CBSNews.com's Steve McLeod describes the enormous impact on policymakers when he wrote, in global warming circles, the CRU wields outsized influence. It claims the world's largest temperature data set, and its work and mathematical models were incorporated into the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's 2007 report. The report, which is what the Environmental Protection Agency acknowledged it relies on the most heavily when concluding that carbon dioxide emissions endanger the public health and should be regulated. But as you read the programmer's comments below, remember, this is only a fraction of what he says. And what does he say? He says, but what are all these monthly files? Don't know, undocumented. Wherever I look, there are data files. No info about what they are other than their names, and that's useless. And if you get very bored, you can look up Harry ReadMe, and you can read all this. This one's taken from page 17 of the file. It's botch after botch on the next page. The biggest immediate problem was the loss of an hour's edits to the program when the network died. No explanation from anyone. I hope it's not a return to last year's troubles. This surely is the worst project I've ever attempted. Eek. Oh God, if I could start this project again and actually argue the case for junking the inherited program suite. This should have been rewritten from scratch a year ago. Am I the first person to attempt to get the database in working order? As far as I can see, this renders the weather station counts totally meaningless. Khobar Air Report, data from an Australian weather station, cannot start in 1962. It didn't open until 1993. What the heck is supposed to happen here? Oh yeah, there is no supposed. I can make it up. So I have. And he's got a little smiley face right there. He's happy that he's making up data. He's happy. Keep making things up, Harry. You can't imagine what this has cost me to actually allow the operator to assign false WMO World Meteorological Organization codes. But what else is there in such situations, especially when dealing with a master database of dubious provenance? So with a somewhat cynical shrug, I added the nuclear option to match every WML possible and turn the rest into news stations. In other words, what the CRU usually do. It will allow bad databases to pass unnoticed and good databases to become bad. Oh, bleep this. It's Sunday evening, I've worked all weekend, and just when I thought it was done, I'm hitting yet another problem that's based on the hopeless state of our databases. This whole project is such a mess. And all of these files were taken from a server at the University of East Anglia, which is presumably the most precise, most prestigious, most well-known climate research university in the world. These are the scientists whom our legislatures go to when they want information about climate change. I want you to think about that for a second. Thought about it? Does it hurt? Yes, yeah, it should. That's okay. All this information has come out recently. This is I've got loads of it here. But since all this new information has come out, surely our policymakers are going to change, right? Our policymakers will see all these emails and see that perhaps maybe we should reconsider legislating climate change. Perhaps we should reduce emissions bans on CO2. Perhaps there should be changes. No. You see, you're funny if you think that the policy's actually changed. The Obama administration thinks, well, what do they think? The Obama administration climate czar, Carol Browner, on Wednesday rejected claims that emails stolen from a British university show climate scientists trumping up global warming numbers, saying she considers the science settled. I'm sticking with the 2,500 scientists. These 2,500 scientists. These are people who have been studying the issue for a very long time and agree the problem is real, said Ms. Browner, who President Obama has tapped as his chief of policy on global warming. Well, I'm surprised, but no, I'm not surprised by this at all. It should be blindingly obvious that the climate change debate is political, not a scientific one. Ms. Browner herself is evidence that this is political and not scientific, because Browner isn't a scientist. Browner was a member